Well, into the abyss we go, I suppose, diving into Islamic exotericism. Reza Negarestani's Islamic Exotericism, Apocalypse in the Wake of Refractory Impossibility. You've provided quite the dense material for us.
Yes, Negarestani, not exactly known for his light reading, but that's what makes this so fascinating. I mean, he takes a concept like the apocalypse, right? Something humanity can't get enough of, it seems, and just shows how meaningless it becomes in the face of how he sees Islam conceiving of God.
Yeah, it's certainly a far cry from the fire and brimstone we're used to.
Exactly. Most apocalypses they promise some kind of revelation, right? A big unveiling of the ultimate truth. But Negarestani argues that the Islamic apocalypse, the Qiyamah, it's not about seeing anything clearly at all. It's about being crushed, just utterly crushed by the fact that you can never grasp the divine. Allah is just too vast, too much.
This idea of impossibility when it comes to Allah, that seems to be the foundation of his whole argument. So maybe that's where we should start.
It's really the only place to start. Negarestani, he's drawing on centuries of Islamic thought here, right? And he argues that Allah is fundamentally different from the kind of God you find in other monotheistic traditions. Forget this idea of mystical union, of becoming one with God. No. Allah is radically external, outside our comprehension, our categories, our very existence.
So where does that leave humanity? I mean, if there's this insurmountable gulf, right, between us and the divine, what's the point? Of striving, of even existing?
Yeah, that's where affordance comes in. Negarestani, he doesn't use this term lightly. He's talking about a kind of cosmic economy, a limited, a defined set of interactions. That's what humans are allowed with this immensity, with Allah. It's not about merging. It's not even about truly understanding. It's about recognizing the sheer boundaries of what we're capable of.
So our interaction with the divine, then, it's more about recognizing our limitations than about some kind of transcendent understanding.
Exactly. He draws on Roman and Garden's work here on ontology, specifically this idea that even open systems, even those, they require some degree of closure, a way to protect themselves. He uses the analogy of a niche. Like in an ecosystem,
right.
It's open, but it's strategically so. And our niche, if you will, it's defined by this refractory impossibility, to use Negarestani's term. We exist in the shadow of something we can never truly grasp, and that very limitation, that's our existence.
You've used the word capacity a few times now. It seems pretty central to how Negarestani is framing all of this.
Capacity, or rather our lack of it. It's the defining factor, really, in how we relate to the divine. Think of it as the limiting factor. It's what sets the boundaries of what we can understand, what we can do. We are finite beings, inherently limited. We can't comprehend the infinite. And Negarestani, he uses a diagram from Nicholas of Cusa to show this, actually.
Right.
Diagram 1, the threefold of existence.
I'm looking at it now. It's quite stark.
It is. It depicts the absolute existence of God as this perfect symmetry, right, of actuality, of possibility. Human existence, on the other hand, it's tangential. It's always off to the side, defined by its deviation from that absolute.
So our very existence is a measure of our inability to be God, in a way. I mean, there's a bleak kind of poetry to that. I don't know if poetry is the right word.
Negarestani, he's not afraid of bleakness. He's pointing out a dissonance at the very heart of existence itself. Even this concept of unity,
right?
Something we normally think of as this blissful merging with the divine. It takes on a much more unsettling meaning here.
In what sense?
In the sense that unity in this framework, it's not about transcendence. It's about the stark recognition of our limitations. It's the measure of what we are allowed, what we are permitted to interact with, not what we could ever hope to fully grasp. The more we strive for unity, the more we're confronted by this vastness, this impossible vastness that we can never be a part of.
So it's almost an inversion of the usual mystical yearning. It's the pursuit of unity that reveals how futile that pursuit actually is.
Exactly. And it's here that Negarestani draws a very clear contrast between Islamic and Christian theology, especially in how they think about the relationship between humanity and the divine.
Yeah. This Christian idea of Jesus as a kind of intermediary,
Yeah.
a bridge between humanity and God, that doesn't exist in this framework, does it?
Not at all. Negarestani is very, very clear about that. Islam rejects that model completely. There is no intermediary. There's no bridging that gap. He says, and I'm quoting here, "No son and no father. There is only a law external to all beings and their surrounding outside."
That's about as definitive a rejection as you can get.
And it's this absolute chasm, right? This gulf that gives rise to the unsettling nature of Islamic exotericism, at least how Negarestani sees it. It forces a fundamental reframing of existence itself, one that just doesn't offer the comfort of revelation, of reconciliation.
So what implications then does this have for how we understand the Islamic apocalypse, this Qiyamah you were talking about?
It means we have to abandon our preconceived notions of what an apocalypse is. The Islamic apocalypse, it's not an event. It's not a point on a timeline. It's a state of being. This ever present confrontation with the abyss of Allah's impossibility.
That sounds intense, to say the least.
It is. Remember the term vat that Negarestani uses?
Yeah, the spatial now,
right?
As opposed to zaman,
yeah,
which is more like chronological time.
Exactly. Vat is this ever present now? This all encompassing now. It's a state of being where the past and the future they just collapse into this single overwhelming instant. and because Allah is radically external, radically close, this now is saturated with this inescapable imminence.
And there's no anticipation.
Yeah.
No waiting for some climactic event.
Yeah.
The apocalypse, if we could even call it that, it's already here. It's happening.
And it's an apocalypse of disillusionment, a stripping away of any comforting illusion that we might have about understanding or accessing the divine. We are confronted with our utter insignificance. I mean, in the face of this absolute and that confrontation, that's ongoing. It's relentless, inescapable.
That's quite different from how we usually think about imminence, especially in the Christian tradition.
Completely. Christian imminence, even when it's focused on the apocalypse, it's still working within this framework of anticipation, of waiting. There's a temporal distance built into it, but Islamic imminence, as Negarestani is laying it out, it's immediate. It's relentless. There's no escaping it.
It's not a gentle embrace. It's more like a cosmic assault.
An apt description. Negarestani quotes the Quran. "We are closer to him than his jugular vein." And that's not meant to be comforting. That's a suffocating closeness. The overwhelming presence of something that just defied our attempts to understand it, to control it.
There's a violence to that kind of intimacy, isn't there? It's like being crushed under the weight of something so vast, so unknowable.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's this violence, this disruption that Negarestani identifies as the defining characteristic of Islamic chronopolitics.
Chronopolitics, right. Which is not just about time. It's about how we understand time, and how that shapes our entire worldview.
Exactly. Negarestani argues that Islamic exotericism, it disrupts this linear view of time, this very teleological view that's so common in Western thought. He goes so far as to say that for Christianity, Islam itself represents a kind of apocalypse.
Because it exposes the cracks, in a way, in our neatly constructed systems of meaning, our hope for some ultimate revelation.
Yes. It's this force that's constantly eroding the foundations of our understanding, this unsettling presence that just defies categorization, defies containment.
And it's interesting because Negarestani seems to draw this very sharp line between Islamic exotericism and what he calls mysticism or contemplative theology.
He sees those approaches as naive, delusional even, in the face of Allah's utter externality. He'd say if the divine is truly unknowable, then any attempt to grasp it through mystical experience, through theological reasoning, it's pointless. It's like trying to capture the ocean in a drinking glass.
So where does that leave us? I mean, if we can't access the divine through through these traditional means. What are we supposed to make of Islamic exotericism? What are we supposed to do with it?
Those are the questions, aren't they? And Negarestani doesn't offer us any easy answers. He offers us no comforting platitudes.
Is there any value then in even grappling with this, with this bleak, with this unsettling worldview?
Perhaps the value is in the grappling, in confronting the stark reality that the universe, our place in it, it might be far more terrifying, far more alien than we ever allowed ourselves